Hallå där, varmt välkomna tillbaka ni som följer The Conference på sydsvenskan.se. Det här är dagens andra liveintervju med en av de många fantastiska talare som är på The Conference i Malmö idag och imorgon. Jag lämnar er och det svenska språket nu för en liten stund därför att mannen vi har med oss på scen här håller sig med engelska. This is Kevin Allocca from YouTube, everybody. Warm hand for him, please.
Thank you.
Now, Kevin has just given a presentation in there. For those of you who are here who sort of missed that or want to add an additional question, this is for you. So first of all, Kevin, I realize it's impossible. Can you give us the sort of 60-second version of what you just took an hour to do in there?
Yeah, sure. So the prompt was come and talk a little bit about how things go viral, right? And so I get asked this question all the time. It's like one of the most common things that people ask me. And so we kind of came at it from the other perspective, which is what are the sort of elements of the web and of technology that have enabled the viral video phenomenon to exist. And so we talked a little bit about how we have this open distribution network that exists now that we didn't have before, right? Where things can pass between different places, and so there's a decentralized environment where things don't have to be restricted anymore by geographic boundaries or economic boundaries. We talked about how participation has become a core element of entertainment and news and education and things, but of this kind of content, how our ability to engage with it or around it more commonly is core to the experience. And then we kind of talked a little bit about how there's this shared cultural experience that has evolved where things that are truly creative that we can be a part of that are surprising and interesting have the ability to spread in ways that wouldn't have been possible before. So it was really fun. We don't have the benefit of all the funny videos, but otherwise, that was sort of the general bullet points.
Right. Now, in true Google style, Google fashion, you have an interesting title.
Oh, yeah.
You are?
I'm head of culture and trends.
Right, but I thought you were the nonsense expert too.
Well, so a little secret, and don't tell anybody else at Google this, but head of means no power at all.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What, you need to be president to have real power?
Yeah. You have like the higher, more important you are, the less interesting your title becomes. You're like a SVP of business or something, you know what I mean? But no, I mean, I think, at the end of the day, the reason I call myself a nonsense expert is I think that we spend a lot of time trying to figure out sort of the way these things work, and a lot of people, would consider that silly, or the things themselves very silly, but if you deconstruct them and the behaviors behind them or the things that allow them to exist, these are very sophisticated things. They're very important things that are dramatically changing sort of how our entertainment landscape, how media companies operate, how education spreads, how we get news in different parts of the world. And
this is all, it seems random. Looking from the outside, you see this random guy doing this random thing, and boom, 28 million views. And now we want to make science of that, understand how this happens.
Yeah.
Can we do that?
The science is the wrong kind of science. I think people want to look at a data set and say, okay, well, on this day this happened, and on this hour this happened, and this person shared it with this, and yeah, that kind of exists. But the real science is actually a psychological question of why we find something like a Gangnam Style so interesting. Like, why is a video that's in Korean, which is not a widely spoken language, and a video that is about a neighborhood in Seoul that most people have never heard of, why is that the biggest thing on YouTube ever? That's a psychological question, or a sociological question, or an anthropological question, not a data question.
Do you have an answer?
I have no idea. None of those things. I wish.
Yeah. So now in Sweden, PewDiePie is of course the biggest guy. Felix Kjellberg, you know him. He talks about how he's playing video games, and he's got a gazillion views, 500 million video views on YouTube, 29 million subscribers, I think.
Yeah.
And he's an interesting concept, but he's not a business model. He's that random guy who happened to attract that big audience.
Well, I mean, he operates a business. I mean, he's running advertising. He makes revenue from that audience. So, in a way, there's a real business there, and there's a lot of other people like him. There are thousands of people who make real livings just by producing video content like that. It's actually really fun to be in Sweden and talk to people who know what PewDiePie is, because most of the time in the United States, he's like the most famous person that's not a famous person in the world. And so like in the United States, I could be like, oh yeah, there's PewDiePie, or people see him on the top of the YouTube chart, and it's this like, I try to use them in talks, but it's too complicated to explain how video gaming is a massive genre of entertainment, and commentary has become a huge industry, and how this person from Sweden who lives in Brighton, England, has like a massive following, around the world, and it's a complicated thing. But I think that there are a lot of people that are like him that also sort of defy explanation to a lot of people that are making livings and building giant audiences online right under our noses.
Well, I try to understand this through asking questions to my daughter. She's 9. She's an avid Minecraft player, and when she wants to relax from playing Minecraft, she'll go on YouTube and watch other people play Minecraft.
Yeah.
And hear their commentary and learn the stuff they're doing. And I keep on asking her, why is this funny? Why is this fun? And it's always the same sort of answers as I would give my parents. You don't get it. You're an old person. This is, I just like the language. I just think it's fun. Like I would think of a comic book or some sort of music. It's a classic youth culture phenomenon. We're not supposed to understand it.
Yeah, I mean, there's an element of that, and I think also, and I kind of hit the tail end of this where when I was a kid we used to play video games, and I remember the fun experience of playing video games with my friends. Like it's like one of the great things about video games, right? And people talk about video games being very isolating, but they actually can be very social. And so you have that experience of the really funny friend, the guy that can make you laugh when he says anything, playing video games with him, and how enjoyable that was, or how enjoyable it was to hang out with that girl who could do that. And that's what they're doing on this mass scale, essentially, is that PewDiePie is the funniest, most ridiculous friend you could have to play video games with, and he just happens to be Swedish and live in the UK. And that's a behavior that is really something that a lot of people, especially people who study the media very closely, didn't really grow up with.
Right. So what's your favorite nonsense at the moment?
I went to Boston College in the United States, and the ice bucket challenge thing was sort of something that actually spread from a student.
Can
who
you
went
just
to Boston
explain
College.
what the ice bucket challenge is?
You may have seen this thing. It's basically a charity challenge where people. It started out where you would challenge someone and say, you have dump this bucket of ice water in your head, and if you don't, you have to donate $100 to charity, and you name 3 people, and they have 24 hours to do it.
And the charity is ALS, by the way, the ALS disease.
Exactly. So it evolved into this big ALS charity. They've seen huge uptake in donations, and a lot of celebrities have been doing it. And it's just, I love watching very simple concepts spread to different people in very quickly. It's amazing. It's an amazing thing to watch because it's so different than anything that I remember from when I was younger. Do you do it? I have not done it because I feel like some sort of bizarre journalistic obligation to not have my own thing if I'm going to talk about it all the time. But I've dumped water on at least 3 people, so I feel like I've
sort of participated. Yeah. All right, that's good. Now you gave a very appreciated TED Talk about 3 years ago, I think. You pointed out some basics for virality. You mentioned unexpectedness. You mentioned community. You mentioned participation, and just the concept of that there will always be tastemakers in society. So are those 4 things still true?
So the one thing that I think is different is, and the tastemaker thing has changed a bit. At that time, there was a real challenge for people to find distribution structures that would allow things to spread very quickly. You basically, for something to get so many views so quickly, you need to be able to have a rapid spread, right? And the only way that can really happen is if things are getting to large networks very quickly. And so things like blogs or the homepage of Reddit or people who had big followings like celebrities, those were easy ways to hit those distribution channels. Now more and more of the very popular viral videos are coming from professionals, and they're coming from people who have built audiences and built their own communities. And so imagine now, instead of being like, I've got this great thing, I have to get it out there and make sure, do PR and make sure all these people see it. Imagine if every time you posted something you had 29 million subscribers like PewDiePie. He averages probably like 5 million views on every single thing that he posts, right? So you have this network of people that's already there that wants to be invested in what you're creating. And I think that's a thing that kind of existed in 2011 when I was putting that together, but has definitely kind of blossomed in the last couple of years.
Okay. Now, I know we have at least one question from the audience. Let's see, those gentlemen who wanted to ask a question before. Let's see, is he back or has he disappeared from us?
I think
he seems to not be here. Is there anybody else who cares to ask something for Kevin? And we can do that now before we're about to round things off. Don't be shy if you're not. There you go. And if you prefer to do it in Swedish, we'll translate. If you prefer to do it in English, that's great too. Here's a microphone from Anna. Who are you? Let's see. No, we can probably need to put the sound on back there. Let's see if we can get some assistance with that. I think we're on.
Hello.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Asif. I work in social innovation sector, and I'm working closely with storytelling and how we can have a better impact by showing stories. So what's your thought on adding storytelling with virality? And you haven't shared in your presentation also how we can use storytelling as a kind of mean to make it viral, putting in some stories behind those kind of videos?
I mean, it's an interesting question. I think there's a lot of, there hasn't been a ton of like sort of narrative that's gone viral. I think part of that, the reason for that, is that there's a real authenticity that people respond to for things that get that popular, and it can be hard to recreate that in a narrative context. But I think that there are all kinds of sort of interesting applications from a storytelling perspective of this stuff, where people are doing things over time and not relying on a single moment or something. And I'm struggling to think of a really strong example here, but I mean, I think there's a lot of opportunity in that space right now, because I don't think people have cracked that one yet in the same way. I think you see a lot of people who are kind of verite kind of style videos that are still very popular. You're seeing a lot of people who are real people talking, or you're seeing things that are very funny moments, but aren't necessarily true storytelling. But I think it's more likely that stuff will gain traction through different means than simply through sort of viral. I think there are a lot of channels that do narrative, do it very well, but do it sort of on a consistent basis, build audience over time rather than relying on like a single one-off hit.
So I'm also going to ask you about the one thing that bothers me about YouTube, which is your commentary culture. Mm-hmm. It can be really harsh.
Yeah.
You can really see some nasty things put out there. How come you don't have that positive, fluffy Facebook atmosphere with all likes? How come people get nasty?
It's a really hard thing to explain. I mean, I've asked myself this a lot, and there's a lot of, even within YouTube, people have so many different thoughts about sort of the comment culture. I mean, part of me wants to think this is what it looks like when people can say anything, anonymously, and that comes with a price. Like, it comes with all different implications. I think the other thing that people don't really see, and especially people who don't watch YouTube all the time, is that when you look at a viral video's comments, they're usually particularly strong, let's put it that way. And it's because you have people coming in from all different places that have landed in this one spot, and people use it as an opportunity to say a lot of different things, right? But if you look at someone who has built a consistent audience, or you look at something like if you look at car parts videos about people who build automobiles, those comments are all incredibly positive because you have a real community that's having an actual discussion about something, and they're all experts. They've all come there because they have a common interest. And I think that when you have something funny or you have something silly, you end up with people who come from all different paths, and it just sort of makes itself an environment for a lot of diverse points of view. But I think that sort of is a little bit overstated, and I think if you ask your daughter, she might say something different, although I hope she's not reading too many YouTube comments.
No, luckily not yet, but we may get to that later. Yeah. So we're talking about cracking the code of today. Mm-hmm. People want to go viral today and understand how that happens today. I'm going to challenge you to ask what they need to do tomorrow. We talked about some of the trends today, what's been building these audiences and these behaviors. What are we looking at in, let's say, no more than 5 years, because then that's completely far out. Let's say 5 years. What are we looking at?
I think we're going to continue to see this trend of people who are producing things consistently and building audiences finding these sort of hits. I think there will still always exist this beautiful thing of the double rainbow guy who in the park captures this one moment and he uploads it, and
just yelling and
exactly. It's sort of the beauty of the internet in some ways. I think that will always exist, but I think more and more you're going to see people, and we as a media consuming culture are going to understand this concept of people who produce things with consistency for the web a bit more, and so we're going to see more and more of these types of things like being the dominant things that we're discussing and talking about here today. And there are more and more professionals, and things look more and more professional as we start to have great cameras in our pockets all the time and things. So I think the grainy dog like dancing video is a thing that existed and sort of defined YouTube in the early days, but that's not sort of the predominant thing that exists today, and it's certainly not the thing that kind of is where the whole platform is going.
All right. We have a minute to take any final question if anybody cares to. If not, we're going to be wrapping this up. Yes, you're happy, you're satisfied. We have a question from the gentleman here. Let's give him a microphone. Who are you, sir?
So my name is Luca. I'm from Denmark, just across. Yep.
Nice.
You live on the second floor by any chance? Sorry, you must be so tired of that.
Sorry. The song is about a girl, just so...
Oh, that's true.
No, so I was so this was where what is happening on YouTube, where that is going. So where do you see YouTube going? Like from your perspective now, we can get some insights maybe.
I mean, one of the fascinating things about YouTube, and this is kind of a cop-out answer, is that sort of it kind of molds with the things that people are doing on it, right? Like, if you think of, first of all, YouTube was originally going to be like a dating site, right? And then it became a video sharing thing. And when you think about just the ability to just easily distribute and share video content being the central principle of YouTube, and then you have these channels that develop, and you have people who predominantly listen to music, they get all their music on YouTube. I mean, there are all these things that are being built off of it. So and then the site sort of conforms with that behavior. So it's hard to say like where the whole thing will go without sort of predicting how people will be behaving in the next couple of years. I mean, I think there's a lot of cool, we're seeing some of the bigger changes are that when you look at the international content, there's so many more countries that are using YouTube. We're looking at countries in Africa starting to get connectivity. There was a wonderful talk earlier about how that's changing. And so the landscape of what's very popular and what's kind of spreading from different countries is another thing that's going to change as we all sort of get higher bandwidth and access to internet.
All right. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you, Kevin Allocca. An applause for him, please.
Thank you.
Och tack alla ni som har hängt med på sydsvenskan.se. Vi kommer tillbaka imorgon med ytterligare 2 gäster här från The Conference som vi träffar på den här scenen. Hoppas ni vill titta då. Ha det bra, vi ses. Thanks a lot. Thanks.